What's up, Warriors fans? It's your main man, Max, here with Warriors Latest. And after this weekend, we got a lot to talk about when it comes to Dub Nation. Now, we both heard the news. Milwaukee is no longer interested in moving Giannis. And let's be honest, Giannis wasn't going to the Warriors, but this does affect the team indirectly as it resets the market for their prime target, Kevin Durant. Now that Durant is the hottest item on the market, his price is going to soar to the point where the Warriors are not going to be able to afford him, even though they may be able to put together a good offer. Now, when I heard that news, I'm thinking, okay, what's a viable plan B? And my first instinct was to go back to a former target of the Warriors last summer, Lauri Markkanen. Now, Lauri is almost exactly what the Warriors need. They need a stretch big, they need some youth, and they need a guy who can at least create the proper spacing to allow Draymond and Jimmy to attack the basket, getting those mid-ranges or getting those easy layups, because they couldn't get the job done without stretching the floor when they were playing the Timberwolves. And I really thought it was an amazing idea, but the biggest sticking point I have with any deal involving Lauri Markkanen is the fact you have to deal with Danny Ainge. And as we both know, Danny Ainge, when dealing an all-star, is going to need an arm, a leg, your firstborn son, 3 unprotected first-round draft picks, and at least 2 pick swaps. And when you're drawing that much blood in any trade, you know you aren't going to end up the better team after it. On top of that, Lauri is a young player whose contract is enormous and runs through the Warriors' current championship timeline. Now, as I've said before, the Warriors' timeline is only next season and the season after that to win the title. Because after the next 2 seasons, Steph's going to be 39, Draymond and Jimmy are going to be 37, and I would not be surprised if all of them retired at the same time, maybe given the exception to Draymond, who would like to end his career with the Pistons because they're his hometown team. And I understand that. But it made me think, okay, what's another option for Plan B that won't break the bank and make the Warriors better at the same time? And I thought of a lot of guys. I thought Trey Murphy might be one. I thought Nikolai Vucevic might be another. But surprisingly, the biggest guy that I've come up with has been none other than John Collins. Now, you may remember Collins as the guy who helped the Hawks in their 2021 playoff run to the Eastern Conference Finals before they got blown off by the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis himself. But he does help the Warriors in a number of ways. Now, in the short term, he provides the Warriors with that instant offense, both in the post and as a third scorer next to Jimmy and Steph. Now, you may be thinking, from what I remember from his run, he's a bruising center who plays in the paint. And he is that kind of player, as that rotation of him and Clint Capella were able to wear down guys like Julius Randle when he was in his first All-Star season, as well as Joel Embiid in that second round series that forced Ben Simmons to completely just forget who he is and be afraid of playing basketball. And to this day, Ben Simmons has not recovered from that Hawks series. But what he also provides is a stretch big. And while he may be a bruiser, he actually hit almost 40% of his three-point shots this past season. And I know, I was completely taken aback when I saw that stat, but it gives the Warriors exactly what they need in that stretch big who can really bruise with the bigger centers that they're going to face in the playoffs. I mean, let's look at any playoff run. They're going to have to go through Anthony Davis. They're going to have to go through the Rockets again and Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun. They're going to have to go through the Timberwolves again and somehow find a way to beat Rudy Gobert in the post. And they may have to go through guys like Joker, and they're going to have to go through the Twin Towers that are the Oklahoma City Thunder with Chet and Hartenstein. And the simple fact of the matter is, if they still want to continue to play small ball, fine. I'm not the fan of it anymore that I used to be, but that's just the way they do. It allows them to play fast and loose and at least be strong on defense, but it works. And if it works and wins championships for the Warriors, I'm fine with it. But by having that stretch big again, it's going to drag the players out. On top of that, Collins is also on an expiring contract, which really helps the Warriors considering their cap situation. Yes, he is going to be a free agent after next season, but if things don't work out, say mid-season, he can be traded for a better player, say at the trade deadline, and that will help the Warriors within their playoff run. In the long term, he is going to, say he does add to that playoff run, he's going to be that starting center who is that third option moving forward for the next 2 years at the very least. And when you have like a strong rotation, even if it's a small ball center rotation of say Kevon Looney, Draymond Green, and John Collins, John Collins being the primary scorer for the bigs, I like that. I like that rotation because it's going to be similar to what the Hawks did in 2021, except the Warriors have more championship experience than the Hawks. They'll be able to constantly rotate their bigs. The bigs won't get worn out. And then next thing you know, the opposing big is taken out of the game because of A, foul trouble, 2, just general fatigue because he's just being destroyed in the post nonstop, and C, the fact that he's going to be out is going to help the Warriors on offense. Now, the other big issue that I thought of was what's it going to cost? You're dealing with Danny Ainge here, and with Laurie, it would have cost an arm, a leg, firstborn son, three draft picks, 2 swaps, Jonathan Kuminga, and pretty much all of the youth on the roster. But because Ainge is aiming towards at least being competitive this season, as he doesn't want to dwell in the toilet forever, it's not going to cost as much because Collins, like I said, he's on an expiring contract, and that doesn't really benefit the Jazz moving forward. So at the very least, it's going to cost Jonathan Kuminga. And like I said before, Kuminga has no place moving forward with the Warriors. Yes, he is a great player, but he just does not fit the current system. He is not a three-point shooter. He may defend multiple positions, but he's an ISO type player. And when you have an ISO type player with a team that loves to move the ball around, that's basically a ball stopper, and he's just ruining the offense. And while he did do great with his fill-in role when Steph went down against the Timberwolves, it wasn't enough to get them more than a single win. And as a Warriors fan, that was extremely frustrating. So let's look at any deal. It'll likely cost Kuminga, and you know what? If it costs more, the Warriors can go out and get some of those extra pieces from the Jazz to add into the trade and complete it. As you look at the Jazz right now, the Jazz are a very large collection of great players, but not a lot of them that fit together. And when you have a great team with great pieces, but they don't fit together, you're going to be middling in obscurity for the longest time unless you do something about it. So say a trade for Collins would look like Buddy Hield, Kuminga, and maybe some other player, if not a second-round draft pick. You could bring in guys like maybe even Jordan Clarkson to add on to John Collins because he's also on an expiring deal. And adding a guy like Jordan Clarkson re-solidifies the bench. Clarkson's a great point guard who can really move the ball around. And it's not going to cost a lot. I got to emphasize the cost because the Warriors, like I said, are really really working with the second apron, and they don't want to be stuck there. They want to be able to sign free agents that they can actually use and refortify their bench to go along with whatever they can acquire for Jonathan Kuminga, and become that playoff team that was supposed to make the great run that they did this postseason, but unfortunately didn't because Steph went down. Now, let's look at the bottom line here. The bottom line is the Warriors have to find a big who can stretch the floor. For the past 2 playoff runs since their title run in 2022, it's literally been mirror images of what happened. We look at 2023. They went to 7 games against a young and upcoming Sacramento Kings team because they really couldn't fight off Domantas Sabonis, and he just had their way with them. But thankfully, their experience was able to overcome, and they won that series. But once they got to the next series against the Lakers and Anthony Davis and LeBron James, there was really nothing that can be done. Now you look at this playoff run versus the Rockets and the Timberwolves, same issues. The Rockets, young and upcoming team, they have the youth, they have the length, but they don't have the experience. And while the Warriors went up 3-1 and should have closed it out in Game 5, they weren't able to because they didn't have the size. Alperen Sengun and Steven Adams were able to have their way with the Warriors, forcing them to Game 7 before the Warriors' experience was able to help them, and the Warriors won out. Now, we saw what happened in the second round series. Steph goes down. Boom. It is literally like a boat without a captain, just wandering, and you know it's going to hit an iceberg and sink. Jimmy Butler did whatever he could to try and help the team, but they just couldn't overcome Rudy Gobert when they attacked the basket, and they couldn't hit water falling out of a boat when shooting from three. It was tough to watch. And if the Warriors are going to make that playoff run where they win one more title for Steph before he calls it a career, on top of giving Jimmy his first title, they're going to have to add that stretch big like Collins. Yes, he may not be as big as some of the other centers, but in a rotation with him, Kevon Looney, and Draymond, bruising and really wearing down opposing big men the way that Collins and Clint Capella did against Joel Embiid, it's really going to pay dividends moving forward. And like I said, if things don't work out, you can trade him at the trade deadline and find somebody who helps you more in the near term and in the long term. So if the Warriors want to actually make a significant impact this offseason, they need to trade for a guy like Collins who could bring immediate offense to the team, as well as find ways to deal with the opposing centers. And for Warriors Latest, I'm your main man, Max, and as always, go Dubs.